This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
To the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Falcons analyst Jarvis Davis, Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, and 11 Live anchor Maria Martin. The Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Falcons hired a hitman, but was it the right hitman? We'll discuss. And do secondary moves in free agency tell us anything about the secondary? We'll unpack that. Also, does the right of refusal, first refusal tag mean it's Ryan under center? We will discuss that. And if Terry really means I said what I said. But first, let's talk about the 77 members of the franchise that stood on business in Athens Wednesday. So Jarvis, the Falcons rolled deep to the Georgia Bulldogs Pro Day in Athens. Reportedly, there were upwards of 20 Falcons employees in town to stand next to that guy, the GM Howie Roseman for the Philadelphia Eagles, who's created essentially the blueprint that everyone is
an apartment
trying
down
to
there too.
recreate. What'd you say?
I said Howie has an apartment down there. You know, breaking news.
He doesn't. So does Omar Khan, but the apartment that Howie Roseman has is better than Omar Khan. He, of course, is the GM for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the GM for the Atlanta Falcons is trying to become a part of, you know what, Jarvis? I won't even say an apartment. He's trying to become a member of the HOA for that particular community, yes, which is known as the Dogs community. But for you, why do you think Raheem Morris, Terry Fontenot and company made it so, we'll say for lack of a better term, mandatory to show out in full force?
Because here's the thing, I'll go back to last year to kind of help bring this thing along a little bit. Last year, when the entire Falcons contingent flew out to Washington State to go take a look at Michael Penix, I think that a lot of people, including myself, say, you know what? Okay, whatever. They're going to see Michael Penix. Yeah, they might like him. All right, whatever. But I think that was a big indication of what the Falcons were going to do in the first round. And I don't think a lot of people paid attention to it. So now, being that you have this, everybody named Mama and them down there in Athens at this Georgia Pro Day, I feel like this is a precursor to what we saw last year. And hey, this is what we're doing, y'all. And they've been very upfront about what they want to do in this draft. Saying, hey, man, we talk number of defensive players. Raheem Morris out here down there, smiling and kicking it, got his Outcast sweater on, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to you, bro. Get a couple points with me for that one. So I think this is one of those things. And to add to it, think about the position that all three of those first round guys play, right? You got Malachi Starks, plays safety. Falcons got a huge need at safety spot. You got Michael Williams, who plays edge. We don't got to go into that, that part of it. And then you got Jalen Walker, who's a versatile guy who will probably be the perfect fit for Jeff Olbricht's defense. So, yeah, y'all better get everybody, every position coach down there. I need y'all to be down there. Oh, and also another one, too. Y'all know big boy Jared Wilson down there, too. And Falcon got a little need at that center spot. So where are they going to go? And I think that for them to have that many people down here, there will be a Georgia Bulldog in a Falcons uniform in 2025. I'm going ahead and say it right now.
Yeah. So, Aaron, I kind of was texting with Jarvis this morning just ahead of the show and kind of said the same thing. Like, this feels like a Michael Penix-like contingent, if you will, that might have some tea leaves or some breadcrumbs. And of course, our colleague on our Monday Falcons show, I texted Tori, been texting with her this morning as well, like, it's giving Michael Penix-like vibes. But for you, why do you think that Raheem, Terry, that entire contingent of Falcons that, we're talking about that too, 20, 22, 77 of them showed up in Athens and made their presence felt yesterday?
Well, I think it looks good, for the cameras. Every year Falcons roll deep to.
So you think it's posturing? Wait. Ooh. So you think it's posturing?
No, I don't think it's posturing. Well, yes, I do think it's posturing, but okay. I don't think that means that the Falcons aren't going to draft a Georgia player, right? I think those are two different issues. Like, every year the Falcons roll deep to the Georgia Pro Day, and every year we make a big deal about it. Now, granted, they probably roll deeper this year than they have in previous years, but I think the chances of them taking a Georgia player high in this year, because they've taken Georgia players, they just always wait till round 6 or 7 to take those guys. But I think the chances of them taking a Georgia player high this year are higher than they have been because of what Jarvis is saying, where the Falcons need match up very well with all the Georgia players, the quality Georgia players that are available in this year's draft. So I think those are kind of separate issues of just they could take a Georgia player, but the fact that they have position coaches going to a pro day is, to me, is more just did you need to see Malachi Starks work out for Jerry Gray to be like, oh, I want this guy? Did he suddenly decide that now, or did he just ignore the last 3 years of college film or something like that? So I just think most of that was just they didn't have anything to do on Wednesday, so they rolled deep to Athens, but I also think there's also a probability. So we'll sit here in April if they draft a Georgia player in the first or second round and be like, oh yeah, it was because they all showed up at the pro day. But I don't think those are the same things, basically.
Yeah, and you hear that all the time, ooh, that was kind of it. But on the same token, there were moments where we heard after the Michael Penix showing in Seattle last year, Maria, there was conversation about, ooh, does it make a difference? Ooh, no, it doesn't make a difference. And then we found out, yeah, it made a difference. But for you, being out there yesterday and being out there, the past couple of years, was there anything, I'll ask you this just slightly differently, was there anything indicating yesterday that you've seen that might say, hey, when you took that drive up 85 north to 316 and you saw something else in Athens, anything different for you? Did it change anything about your thoughts?
When it comes to the Falcons possibly drafting a Georgia player?
Possibly, yes. Perfect.
So the Falcons have never drafted a University of Georgia player in the first round, ever in the history of the NFL. And I've been to 5 straight pro days. There were 20 staff members there. I got that head count from someone on the staff. And what is so crazy about that is, Aaron's right. They do roll pretty deep, and they should. Athens is not very far from Flowery Branch. It's not a big lift. Get in your car and go to Athens. You should do that, especially when Kirby Smart has been producing elite NFL talent for years now. It's a no-brainer. They're all in the same understanding of that. However, I think there's more urgency to work with Georgia, not like a collaboration, but just working in the sense of we need to study these guys more. We need to be here more. We need to be talking to these people more. I got that sense yesterday in talking to the coaches, in just watching what they did, and the fact that there were 20 of them. And Raw and Terry, that's not a big deal. Raw and Terry should be there. They're probably going to be there, which Terry was on the phone most of the time trying to make his franchise better. But I think, too, Assistant General Manager Kyle Smith was there. Arthur Blank's son, Josh, was there. There were people that were present that made me feel differently about this pro day. I will tell you that. And I've been to 5 straight, and I've seen the people that go physically with my own eyes, and I put them on X or Twitter or whatever they call it now. That made me feel differently. Now, do I think Jalen Walker or Mykel Williams are going to be available at 15? I don't. And if Jalen Walker does happen to slide to 15, it's because of this quad situation he's dealing with and because he was in the bottom percentile of edge rushers in measurables at the combine. And sometimes that scares some people off, even though I don't think it should. But that would be the only reason why I see Jalen Walker kind of sliding to 15. But there are some other prospects who were out there. 18 of them were all out there from the University of Georgia. And then they had a Georgia State, Georgia Tech kid too, who played at Grayson. But I think that there were a lot of eyeballs on a lot of different players. People want to talk about the Mykel Williams and the Jalen Walker because it makes sense. But deeper in that draft, as you guys were talking about, 2nd or 3rd round, you brought up Jared Wilson. Someone directly told me from the staff they were very impressed with his pro day. So I think there are different people in this draft that also make sense beyond. And look, I would love for Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams to be in a Falcons uniform. I said it, a couple of weeks ago, I would die if Jalen Walker was on the Falcons. But, is that going to be a reality? I don't know. 15 is kind of low for both those guys.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned Kyle Smith, because as I was texting with a few folks this morning, they said, yes, it's good to see when Terry Fontenot's somewhere, Raheem Morris, even Arthur Blank, but the one you want to pay attention to, his presence and his movements, is Kyle Smith. So when you said that, I thought about some of those conversations I've been having this morning about who really is important as we not just look at the Georgia Pro Day, but kind of look at the movements of the Falcons at other pro days. But that said, Jarvis, when you think about yesterday and what happened, and good words coming from Athens, even on players like, Warren Brinson, what is it that you think, if anything, that might have changed where Terry and Raheem want to go at 15 or wherever they pick in the first round of the draft, because they don't have to sit at 15? Do you think there was anything they saw yesterday that made them change their minds about where they're going to go?
To be honest with you, if we're saying that Michael Williams and Jalen Walker are not going to be available at 15, what if Malachi Starks is available? You don't think Raheem Morris would want a cat like that pairing up with Jordan? Jesse Bates, for those who don't know, I refer to him as Jordan. I took the nickname from Aaron. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully he's not mad at me. Aaron, I love you, bro. You know what I'm saying? My dog. So if it's that scenario plays out, and I even think that potentially you could probably move back and still get Malachi a couple spots. And guess what? If you're able to pick up another mid-round pick, guess who might be on the table in the mid-round? Well, I mentioned it earlier, Jared Wilson. And Jared Wilson going in to battle it out with Ryan Neuzil for that starting spot. Shoot, sign me up. I love it. So I think that this can get very interesting, because I know I've been hardcore edge rusher at that 15 spot. I still am. But if those two guys are not available, like, there might be some reason to trade back. And I feel like it's still going to be some guys on that edge spot that you can choose. But I wouldn't be too mad if they were to snatch Malachi Starks up, because there's something special about that cat. And I think that the Falcons and Raheem Morris specifically wants guys like that on the back end of their defense.
Yeah, I think, there are plenty, as I said, there are plenty of Georgia players that are good players that where the Falcons are picking, whether we're talking about round 1, round 2, etc., they will have options at a lot of spots. So, I think the focus is going to be on those two edge rushers in round 1, because we, of course, all know that the Atlanta Falcons will, with 100% certainty, be taking an edge rusher in the first round of the NFL draft this year. It's definitely going to happen. So, I think those are the two guys that are focused, but I think Jarvis is right. Whereas, like, if those guys are gone, or for whatever reason, if the Falcons decide that, maybe a different edge rusher is their cup of tea, if they decide to move back, or stick and pick at 15, I do think Malachi Starks is going to be an option for them at some point in round 1, wherever they're picking.
Yeah, Malachi Starks is an incredibly intriguing pick. First of all, he's like the nicest person on the planet. He's so fun to talk to. And he really has never been outside of the state of Georgia. This is completely unrelated, but a really fun fact. So he hasn't spent that much time outside of Georgia. The only time that he has is when it's come to football. So I asked him, I said, what's going to happen if you go somewhere really cold? He said, I'm going to buy a coat and keep rocking. Let's go. I'm ready. So he's just the best. And, I would love for him to be with the Falcons for the same reasons that Michael Williams and Jalen Walker would kind of make sense, in that Kirby Smart's defenders are incredibly versatile. All three of those guys, Malachi included, when we talked to them yesterday, really drove that home, talked about different places on the defense, in Kirby's defense, that they were able to experience, that they were able to hone their craft. And Malachi specifically said, played a lot of star, was able to get in the corner. And he was just talking about different things to help him understand not only defenses, but offenses as well. And Kirby Smart has done such a good job at making these guys kind of morph into whatever defensive play caller wants them to be. That's exactly what Jeff Ulbrich has been talking about. And if you haven't watched it yet, if you go on my X, there's a video of Jalen Walker specifically talking about Jeff Ulbrich and the Falcons. I asked him 2 questions around that. Very interesting comments. He was very fired up, smiled a ton, said he has loved all of his conversations with the Falcons. And specifically, he loves Jeff Ulbrich and what he is planning to do with this defense. He said, direct quote, his plan is visionary and I'm with a visionary plan. Whatever he's with, I'm with. So he loves Jeff Ulbrich, they're all going to say they would love to be drafted by the Falcons or whatever team picks them for sure, but just got a little extra energy out of Jalen when I talked about those conversations, which was interesting. And we saw it a ton yesterday. He was talking to tons of people from the Falcons, not just Jeff Ulbrich, talking to Terry Fontenot at length. And that's just what we could see, a couple different players had a lot of meetings. Trevor Etienne was actually the last one out of the building. A couple of teams kept him really long. So that happens as well. There's those private meetings with the teams on pro days. But, Jalen Walker is going to have an opportunity to work out for these guys privately on April 17th. Mykel Williams will be a part of that private workout as well. So did anything change for the Falcons? I hope so. I hope they got an idea of some other guys beyond maybe a Jalen or a Mykel and maybe Malachi Starks, who had a phenomenal workout at Pro Day. I think maybe that could pique the interest of some people. And certainly he would fit, I think, on this Falcons defense very well.
Well, we're getting closer and closer to finding out if they're actually going to take a dog in a high round, the Falcons. But Falcons hired a hitman recently. But was it the right hitman? We'll talk about that when we take it under further review. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. So when you start using Monarch, you'll realize how much you spend on food delivery. I don't, but maybe you do. But hey, I have a couple of other vices, so there's that. But it helps you to budget smarter and save more. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half of your first year. Use that code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com. All right, guys. So the Falcons finally added a pass rusher who most think will actually work out. We shall see. We know what happened last year, but we digress. The team signed Leonard Floyd to a 1-year, $10 million deal. So for you, Maria, do you think that was a good move, a right move for Terry Fontenot to continue making his case as the right GM moving forward?
I don't think this move specifically is going to make or break Terry's future in Atlanta, but I do think he's on the right track with this one. When I saw Leonard Floyd was coming to the Falcons, I thought, heck yeah. And especially at the deal that they got him at, 1 year, $10 million. This could perhaps be one of the most underrated signings. If, of course, the big caveat, if Leonard Floyd does work out in Atlanta, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. Yeah. Maybe a little jaded from last year, as we've discussed before. We said the same thing about some other things. But I do think that, right. But I do think Leonard Floyd was definitely a step in the right direction. 8.5 sacks in his last year with the 49ers. Yeah. And you get him on, honestly, I kind of think a bargain. And again, people think that the Falcons kind of shy away from Georgia players. Here you go, Leonard Floyd. He grew up in the Atlanta area. He played at the University of Georgia. There's one Bulldog. I think we're going to get a couple more too. And, this does actually give you a legit threat and presence as an edge rusher for sure.
Oh, yeah, Maria, they'll go out and get one in free agency all the time, Lawrence Carter. But whether or not they do it in draft mode, we shall see. But no, I agree with you. I think this one is a safer bet, Aaron, especially because when we look at, to Maria's point, what Leonard Floyd was able to do in his most recent season of getting 8.5 sacks versus what we saw maybe a Matthew Judon do the season before the Falcons got him, coupled with the injury. That's not Leonard Floyd's resume, if you will. So, yeah, I think this one might be a good move. And to Maria's point as well, I wouldn't say we're thinking of Leonard Floyd as the make or break move for Terry Fontenot, but he's trying to stack chips to make the case for his resume. Would this be one of those chips that could stack in his favor?
It has the potential to. I think because of the Matthew Judon experience, it makes you a little more skeptical than you would be normally for a move like this, just because they're basically, very superficially very similar in terms of their age and production and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so you're wondering, okay, why is it going to be different this time? But I think, the main thing with Leonard Floyd is that he's always been kind of the Robin of wherever he's been, whether that was last year in San Francisco with Nick Bosa and the previous year in Buffalo with Von Miller. And then obviously for the years that he was with Raheem in LA when Aaron Donald was there, and then going back to his Chicago days with Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and all those guys. So he's never really been the guy. And right now, if you look at the Falcons roster, you're like, he's going to have to be the guy. And so it does make you wonder a little bit, whether it's a first round edge rusher, whether it's a Trey Hendrickson trade or something like that. You do wonder if the Falcons their plan is for Leonard Floyd to be the main guy or to be that sort of Robin to somebody else's Batman. So I think that's where you as of today, it's to be determined at this point. So it's hard to get Leonard Floyd's going to come in here and he's going to get 10 sacks and 12 sacks or whatever at this stage, because that's never really been him when he's been the main guy, or he's never really been the main guy. But if they can add another guy, and then you're asking Leonard Floyd to be that 8.5, 10 plus sack guy, I think that makes a lot more sense. So I do think this has the potential to move the needle, but at this stage is kind of TBD. And we'll probably be talking about that other move that Terry Fontenot makes as the big needle mover in addition to this one.
Yeah, so Jarvis, it sounds like we would say Leonard Floyd is a good move and possibly a really good move. But in terms of figuring out if it's a great move, it may be a to be determined. But as of today, how do you like that move for Terry Fontenot?
I think it's fine. I look at it from a standpoint of, I think about Pringles and chips, right? Those Pringles real small, like he can be one of those chips in that Pringles can. Why am I using all these food analogies later? I don't know.
Yeah. You got the reduced meat aisle and then the Pringles chips. Are you hungry?
By the way, reduced meat movement, it is on and popping. Y'all better get on this bandwagon. If you're listening or watching right now, I'm telling you, it's real. I got me a pot roast. You know what I'm saying? The Falcons got the lean beef with Mike Hughes. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. But anyway, but I think that when you think about Leonard Floyd and what he brings to the table, I look at him like a hired gun. And I think you use the perfect analogy. You talking about stacking chips, right? That's why I was trying to get it before I got off track. So I think you bring him in to be one of those guys. Like he can't be the guy, like Aaron mentioned. Like he's never been that guy. Ask the Chicago Bear fan base, how they feel about Leonard Floyd. So I think for him to come in and be just a pass rush specialist, I'm so cool with that. I love having veterans in that spot. So you can have Arnie Ebiketie and whoever you draft at that 15th overall pick, rotating in with Leonard Floyd, coming in on third and super long situations. So, and I love putting your best guys on there, right? Regardless of whether or not they can play, especially if they can slide down inside. So I think it's just so many variables you can have on that front four to put pressure on the quarterback. So I feel like you said, he's one of those chips. Could it be a great move? Maybe. He might have a breakout year. Go come on with those 12 sacks. I'm cool with that, because I know when the Falcons signed Darnell Mooney, my expectations weren't that high when they brought him in. But guess what he did? He came in and was wide receiver too. He was that guy. So I feel, hopefully this is one of those moves where you're saying, oh, okay, that's cool. Leonard Floyd, all right, one of the pieces and everything. And then when the season starts, you're like, oh, man, Terry Fontenot hit on that one. And then he doing his thing in the free agency. So that's why I hope it would be, but definitely not right now as in this moment because of the pain that I suffered from getting up before Matthew Judon coming in.
Man, we were so excited.
I'm going to hold my mute. Yes, we were. We were very excited. So, yeah, I'm holding my mute this time, too.
Yeah.
So, Maria, for you, with that Leonard Floyd signing, and it kind of goes back to something we were talking about earlier as it relates to Georgia's Pro Day and the fact that you still might have some needs on the offensive side of the ball, particularly on the line. Does a Leonard Floyd at least give, I'll use this term loosely, give Terry some security in case he decides to go O-line or off? No, I'm going to say O-line because it better not just be offense in general. O-line in the first round, and then, he'll have just a little breathing room to go defensive side in that second round when you have a free agency pickup like Leonard Floyd.
No, I don't think Leonard Floyd is enough for you to switch your pick in the first round to go offensive line. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it has to be someone defensive. And I think what's really positive about all of the moves that we've seen so far that the Falcons have made is that they really are putting energy and effort into the defensive side of the football. I know that we had talked about Grady Jarrett potentially going away, and that's exactly what happened, freed up a lot of money. It seems as though we're working our way towards something a little bit bigger. And I think that's going to be a defensive player. It's got to be. If you're spending a lot of money on offense right now, I don't even know what to tell you anymore. But no, I mean, yes, they need offensive line depth. They certainly need that. And they're going to need some starters here in the next couple of years. But at the same time, I just don't think that's your immediate need right now, especially not in the first round. If they go offensive line in the first round, I'm going to be upset.
And a deep enough class to avoid having to do it in the first round as well.
I'll take a shot with your boy Maria on there.
Sure.
Yes, let's go. Offensive line, baby. I just want to see Maria take a shot with your boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go. Yeah.
Well, we know they're not going offensive line because, again, for 100% certainty, they are definitely taking a pass rusher in the first round.
100%, like literally 100%.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
I mean,
There's
like,
no chance.
We mentioned guys like Malachi Starks and Jahdae Barron from Texas as possible alternatives just because, you know, we need talking points between now and April. But we already know 100% that they're definitely 100% taking a pass rusher in the first round of the draft. So I think Leonard Floyd is part of that process, not necessarily a guy that's going to change your plan, as Maria said.
Yeah, you have to really think about building something, and you can't build something on the defense side of the football with a 32-year-old edge rusher. Sorry. I mean, like I said, but he can be a piece to help you get that defense to that mid-level range, because that's all I'm asking. If you can get to be mid on defense, I promise you, you're going to see a different end result at the end of the season this year in 2025 for the Falcons.
Yeah, I can imagine as well. And yeah, I like it as a piece, but yeah, I don't think it ultimately takes all the pressure off of Terry Fontenot as it relates to getting someone for the edge, because guess what? You still have to do that. And then not just do it in the first round. I know we're talking a lot about that, but yeah, there are multiple moves that need to be made as it relates to rounding out this defense and making it something that the offense can count on when they actually do their jobs. Now, do secondary moves in free agency tell us anything about the Falcons secondary? We'll unpack that in Next Up. So, Aaron, the Falcons struck a deal with the defensive. Well, they stayed with the defensive theme for 2025 free agency by signing Mike Hughes to a 3-year deal that's worth $18 million. So what does this move say about where the Falcons stand in the secondary? In other words, does the signing take corner off the table for the draft, let's say at the top of the draft?
No. I mean, technically no, because Mike Hughes has the versatility to play either inside or outside. And so if the right corner is there for them at the top of the draft, whether that's an outside corner or a nickel corner, I think they'll still certainly be interested in taking that player. Of course, not in round 1 because, you know, they're taking an edge rusher there, but in round 2, it's certainly a possible.
Second round. Yes.
But
100% guaranteed.
Yeah, 100%. You know, just
it's going down.
Take your next 7 rent checks and put it all on the Falcons taking a pass rusher in the first round. And, you know, I probably should pay that because but you know, basically I think Mike Hughes it made a ton of sense for the Falcons to bring back Mike Hughes just because he played well, right, last year. That when you talk about all these free agents that they had on the defense side of the ball, whether you're talking about a Matthew Judon or a Justin Simmons or Eddie Goldman, Mike Hughes is the one guy that you would say out of all those guys lived up to and or exceeded expectations last year. And so they rewarded him with a 3-year deal. We know he's played his best football for most of his career playing on the outside, but he does have that versatility to play inside. So it made a ton of sense for the Falcons to basically say, we know what Mike Hughes is, we know what he gives us, and we still have the opportunity to find better options in the draft. But it makes all the sense in the world for them to sort of solidify at least one out of those 3 starting cornerback spots with Mike Hughes.
How about you, Jarvis, when you think about that move and particularly signing Mike Hughes to that 3-year deal, when you look at the Falcons' decision to do that, do you feel like, well, first of all, do you feel like it's a good move in terms of where it's pointing to the Falcons standing on the secondary, but does the signing actually take the corner off the table for the draft, especially in the higher rounds?
I think it takes it off the table for the first round because, like Free mentioned, they're going to draft an edge rusher in the first round. So no corner in the first round when you bring a guy like Mike Hughes back. But in all seriousness, though, I said that corner is a position that it gets very expensive when these cats do make the market, right? There are reasons why they reach the free agent market. When you're talking about top end corners, guys like DJ Reed and all those stuff, I think we got like $22 million a year. They can't afford that. They just pay AJ Terrell. So when you think about being able to find a guy that, has some issues, who drafted in the first round, was it 2018? Mike Hughes was drafted by the Lions and didn't necessarily work out up there. So you were able to find some value, come in, and Raheem Morris put his stamp on him when he came in. He was like, hey, man, I like what I saw watching the tape, from Mike Hughes when Raheem Morris took over his job. I was like, okay, this man's going to be around. So it makes all the sense in the world for them to bring a guy like that back because you can't pay everybody top end money. Yeah. So for me, I feel that the signing of Mike Hughes solidifies that corner opposite of AJ Terrell. And then, if you want to work a man like Free mentioned in that nickel spot, he can do that too. So this is one of those things that I feel that solidifies that secondary from a standpoint of, okay, we ain't got to spin the wheel no more. We know who this guy's going to be, and that's going to be Mike Hughes, right? Now we can kind of focus in on, okay, where we want to go with safety, at the safety spot. Do we want to use a mid-round pick on that at that position? And maybe we even think about bringing D. Alford back on a reduced contract. Like, okay, what does that look like? I think that, signing Mike Hughes kind of gets the little worry in the back of your mind off of like, okay, who the corner going to be this year? Is it going to be a rookie who more than likely they struggle? It happens. It does happen for those who, want to talk about, oh yeah, you draft this guy at 15, he going to go out here and play his doggone butt off and he's going to be an all-pro in his rookie year. It doesn't necessarily work out like that all the time. So I feel like knowing the devil is what you look for when it comes to free agency. You know what you're going to get from Mike Hughes, so go ahead and pay the man. And that's what they did. And I feel like that's going to help them out as they rebuild this secondary.
Maria, do you like the move of picking up Mike Hughes on that 3-year deal, and maybe what do you think about how that does impact what the Falcons might do in the draft, especially in the early rounds?
I love this. And I think, I don't know, this was like 4 weeks or so ago where we were talking about who on the defense would make sense to bring back for the Falcons. And I said Mike Hughes, and I'm really glad that they did it because especially at the deal and the amount of money they paid him, 3 years, $18 million. Hello, that's a no-brainer for me. Yeah. And it just gives you security and depth.
Price, Maria.
It actually is. And I think it's a phenomenal way to get the best out of the reduced meat aisle. Seriously. Lean beef. That's exactly what that signing was. And it's great because you still get, the flavor from the non-reduced meat aisle. I don't even know how to keep going with this analogy, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I'm done. But what Jarvis is saying is true. And what you guys were talking about when it comes to depth on this defense, what's so important to remember is that I don't want Falcons fans to have false hope and false expectations for the defensive side of the football. New defensive coordinator. He's going to bring a lot of new things opposite of what Jimmy Lake was able to do or not do. And then you are bringing in a lot of new pieces on defense. They really are trying to revamp what it looks like. They have to. They have no choice at this point. So to have some of those veteran guys that not only provide you depth, but just, hey, like if Jarvis is saying, a corner that we go get in the draft, we're not going to expect him to be a starter immediately, an impact player immediately. We want him to grow. We want him to learn. And to be fair, Mike Hughes is one of the few guys on defense that actually took steps forward under Jimmy Lake. So I can only imagine what Jeff Ulbrich would like to do with him. So I'm excited about it. I think it does give you a very reliable piece in the secondary, they need that, especially because I do still think they need to draft a corner at some point in the draft. There's tons of them that would make a lot of sense and can give you a lot of years and a lot of good production at a very cheap price, even cheaper than Reduce Me. What is that? Reduce Me? I don't know.
Off the back of the truck.
That's manager special, actually.
Yeah. It can't be expired because that doesn't even make
It's
sense. I don't know what's
Manager
under that.
special, that brown meat. It looks like it's already been cooked somewhere.
Or it could be the mystery meat at your college, but I digress. So
anyways, yes, I love it.
So we talked about, speaking of working into that nickel spot with Mike Hughes, and most of that rationale is because obviously we're not to the draft, but more importantly, JD, it's because the Falcons chose last week to not tender restricted free agent D. Alford. So when you look at that move, A, was it the right decision? And B, do you think it at all, along with the Mike Hughes deal, do those things together kind of tip the hand for the Falcons in the draft, in your opinion?
I don't think so, because I feel like there's still a possibility that they bring D. Alford back. I think there's still something there that he can be of value to the Falcons, bringing him back on a deal, 1.2 million, a veteran minimum or whatever. So I feel like, the market probably won't be that great for him, to be honest with you. So for me, I feel that doesn't close the door, them not, tendering him and signing a guy like Mike Hughes. I don't feel like that closes the door on bringing a guy like D. Alford back, because I feel they are still combing. Free agency isn't over, people. It's still going on. After the first day, everybody be like, oh man, the Falcons aren't doing anything. Well, just pay attention. They are building. They're trying to build something. And I feel like they're trying to build something with guys who can contribute, and they don't have high expectations when it comes to the type of money that they want. And that's the nicest way I could put it. There we go.
Right. And when you think about, Maria, hey, the league minimum still not a bad look for D. Alford, and that $820,000 he got for being an undrafted free agent. That's not a bad look either. But with D. Alford and at least some of the productivity that he brought to the table for the Falcons, do you think that it was a good move for them to not tender? And also, like Jarvis said, there's a possibility that they'll bring him back anyway.
Yeah, I mean, literally what Jarvis said, it leaves the door open, which is really smart for the Falcons, because you are going to have to get him. If you get him back, it's not going to be for a lot of money. It continues to provide depth for you. And I was just talking about Mike Hughes being one of those few people that took a step forward under Jimmy Lake's defense. Mike Hughes, or D. Alford, did not. He regressed, because the first couple of years that he was with the Falcons, you're thinking, okay, like, we're really getting something out of an undrafted free agent. Like, this guy's pretty good. He's given us something. And then took a couple of steps backwards with Jimmy Lake. But that doesn't mean he hasn't showed you things before that could be there at the reduced meat aisle price. And so, Jarvis, I'm trying to work it in as best as I can.
Yes, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's only because you're my friend. I wouldn't do that normally. But anyways, I mean, look, it leaves the door open. And I think at this point, that's what you got to do when you're trying to really, really, really revamp that side of the ball.
Yeah, I think Maria nailed it. D. Alford under Dean Pease looked pretty good. D. Alford under Ryan Neuzil looked pretty good. D. Alford under Jimmy Lake didn't look that good. So I think there's reasons, if the Falcons believe, that that's not a coincidence, that it's just a random event, like those things are directly related, then I think there's reasons for them to believe that D. Alford under Jeff Ulbrich could look pretty good again. So I think, as Maria and Jarvis have said, the door is still open for D. Alford to return, but I think it's very clear that the Falcons are hoping that they can find an upgrade at some point, whether that's in free agency, whether that's waiting till the draft. I think that's their primary goal, but having D. Alford potentially as your plan B does make a lot of sense, given that, despite the struggles of last year, for the most part in the 3 years he's been here, there's been more good football from D. Alford than bad football.
Yeah.
And so to add to that real quick, T, real quick. So let's not forget about Clark Phillips, because we don't know what that plan looks like for him, because Clark has some good times on the outside, but I don't think long term that's where he naturally fits. So if they don't sign D. Alford, I think there might be a stamp, maybe, that Clark Phillips might be that guy to step into that role for them under this new system, because everybody had their issues in that system with Jimmy Lake. So we'll see.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So Clark Phillips could potentially be a sort of plan B. And hey, the Falcons have to kind of think about a lot of plan Bs, and they're thinking about that because there's a right of refusal tag that might give us an indication that they're going to use that plan. We'll discuss coming up next. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. So instead of juggling multiple apps, you can also use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half of your first year, because managing money with your partner is smoother than ever when you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without stress at monarchmoney.com. So Jarvis, the Falcons hit Ryan Neuzil with the right of first refusal tag, meaning Atlanta can match any offer sheet that he receives from another team. But does this move mean that Ryan Neuzil is essentially Drew Dahlman's replacement, or that the Falcons are continuing to position themselves to have a replacement should Drew Dahlman go elsewhere?
Yeah, I think it is a replacement for Drew Dahlman. It could potentially be one guy that can be a replacement. I feel like this makes all the sense in the world for this to be a competition. You know, I go back to when Matt Hennessy was at that center spot, and then Drew Dahlman, they say, hey, this is going to be a competition. And although sometimes I may have thought that they probably favored Drew Dahlman because they drafted him, and that makes all the sense in the world too, right? But we ain't going to get into that. But it just makes too much sense for them to bring in a guy to be in competition with Ryan Neuzil. Like he came in last year, and there were moments where I was like, all right, cool. I don't even know the difference between the two. You know, there were some games that, you know, Ryan Neuzil played that well. So for me, I feel like, yeah, this makes all the sense in the world for them to say, hey, we're not going to let you walk. We're going to see what your value is. And then if a team gives you an offer, we'll probably match it more than likely, because it's not going to be that much. So, hey, let's go ahead and see what your value is out there and go from there. So, but yeah, definitely got to bring a guy in to compete in training camp, because I just don't like the idea of just, hey, now that he's gone, you're the starter. I don't believe in that stuff. That doesn't work like that in football. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, Maria, when you think about the fact that you have a pretty decent O-line in what the Atlanta Falcons have, a quarterback that is going to continue to trend elite, at least they hope, and Michael Penix Jr., and the departure of yet another Falcon to the Windy City. I mean, what do you think about what this tag for Ryan Neuzil means in terms of whether or not they're kind of looking at Ryan Neuzil as a plan B or a plan until, meaning it could be a to be determined until the draft?
I think it's really smart the Falcons did this. And I think that, you know, Ryan Neuzil absolutely should not be handed the job. And I don't think that's the plan either. You know, what Jarvis is saying, bring somebody in to have competition over the summer and in the offseason. I think that's what they're going to do, whether it be in free agency or through the draft. They're going to have someone competing with Ryan Neuzil. And yeah, he showed you some good stuff. And, you know, he's versatile on the offensive line. He was an undrafted free agent, came in as a guard. They switched him over to center. He can slide, which I think is good and definitely proves to be worthy for him when it comes to value. But testing the free agent open market too for Ryan Neuzil, he's going to see very quickly there's probably not going to be a lot of people that are just going to outmatch the Falcons for him. And so that's really why the Falcons did it. I think bringing him back would be smart as well. You know, you don't really want to see him go to another team right now, especially with the departure of Drew Dahlman. You need some consistency, and there is some playing time for Ryan Neuzil when Drew Dahlman was hurt, obviously. So yeah, I mean, look, I agree with Jarvis. It shouldn't really work like that in football, and it certainly never does, especially in the NFL. So bring somebody else in, but I think this is smart by the Falcons. I do believe that Ryan Neuzil will be here. I just also believe there's going to be some pretty healthy competition to see who's going to be the starting center.
free, does that putting the tag on Ryan Neuzil, does that give, or for you, does that kind of give the breadcrumbs or the tea leaves in terms of what the Falcons might do with Ryan Neuzil, or where they might go to maybe get that competition at center?
Yeah, I think Neuzil for now is a placeholder. I think if the Falcons were really committed to Ryan Neuzil being their new starting center, they could have, gave him more than the $3.2 million that this right of first refusal tender gives him. They could have given him like $5.3 million and basically taken any option for him to leave with a second round pick as compensation should another team come along. I don't think the Falcons have to worry about another team coming along and trying to take Ryan Neuzil from them. As far as I know, there's only been like 2 restricted free agents that have been signed in the last like 15 years, and they were both by Bill Belichick. And since he's out of the league, like, you don't have to worry about teams coming along and swooping in, but never say never. So I think right now Neuzil's kind of the placeholder, as Maria and Jarvis has said. I think they'll probably bring in some competition. I think they would probably prefer some veteran competition just because they have a young quarterback in Michael Penix. And sort of having that sort of veteran center is always a thing that you see consistently around the NFL. For young quarterbacks, it's a big reason why Drew Dalman was signed by the Chicago Bears, because they were like, we need to get a veteran center for our young quarterback with Caleb Williams. And you saw it with Sean McVay, in LA when they had Jared Goff and they brought in John Sullivan, I believe it was, and he was like a 32-year-old guy. So I think there will be potential options for the Falcons if they want to bring in a veteran. David Andrews, Georgia player, just got cut by the Patriots. There's a lot of speculation that the Vikings will cut or trade Garrett Bradbury, their starting center for a long time, who's very familiar with Kirk Cousins, but also is very familiar with Dwayne Ledford, who coached him for 3 years at NC State. So I think I think the Falcons will be interested in guys like that, probably more so than a rookie at this point, to come in and compete with Neuzil. So I think Neuzil, this move means that Neuzil is the guy today. If the season started tomorrow, they'd be comfortable rolling with Ryan Neuzil. But, there's basically 6 months between now and when the season actually starts. And so I think the Falcons will find somebody that they'd be even more comfortable with through that competition that Jarvis and Maria are talking about.
Comfortable is such a funny word with the Falcons.
Yeah, the ethos. That's the word, Maria. The ethos. Yeah, it's the ethos. So, well, apparently Josh Woods, Kyle Hinton, and Elijah Wilkinson all fit the ethos as well, because the Falcons re-signed them. Surprised, excited, thoughts, Jarvis?
I mean, I actually, when we talked about, bringing what guys we were allowed to walk and bring back, Kyle Hinton was one of my guys. I'm like, okay, yeah, bring him back, because, depth on the offensive line is what's needed. He got a little time last year.
Also, look at him.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't let guys that you like, that's been in your system and you trusted them enough to, take some snaps, in a game. Yeah. You don't allow those guys to walk out the door. So, I mean, that wasn't no real surprise there for me.
Yeah, I'm with it. I mean, they just need depth at this point, especially on the offensive line. And what we're talking about, the next couple of years may look very different on the offensive line for the Falcons. And so the best thing that you can do for yourself is create depth where you have it, which is the guys that have already been a part of the system and know it well. And I think that it wasn't really a surprise. I don't really feel great about it. I don't feel bad about it. It's just kind of in the middle.
Yeah, for me, the only surprise I would say is just the timing. Like, I would have maybe these were more late March, early April type of re-signings that I would have expected from these guys. But the fact that they're coming back is not necessarily a surprise. These are, I don't want to call them bodies or anything like that, but like, these are guys that you know what they are. Right. They contributed to your team last year. Josh Woods on special teams, Wilkinson and Hinton have been depth pieces. You've seen Wilkinson start games for you in the past, back in 2022. So it's one of those things where it totally makes sense, given, similar to what we're talking about with Neuzil and Hughes. These guys are known commodities, so it makes sense for the Falcons to bring them back. But at the same time, I think, probably you could have found better options, but you probably would have to spend money to do that. And these are, reduced meat, some might call them, at this point. So, yeah.
We got to find something better, but
We really do. We really
But
do.
I can't think of one now. So Jarvis, you win that round.
Polo nut land, man. Nate ain't coming back, man. I don't see it. Polo
So
land.
he's on the clearance aisle. Okay. So,
Yeah. Manager special at this point.
Anyway, Terry Fontenot really mean I said what I said. We'll talk about it when we come back. So, Aaron, coming into this offseason, a few people were under the impression that maybe Kirk Cousins would be released with Michael Penix, of course, taking over as QB1. But up to now, the Falcons have held true to their word, which is that they intend for Kirk Cousins to be QB2. So the $10 million kicker is coming in a few days, right? That 2026 $10 million kicker. Does Terry Fontenot double down, or is it possible they could actually work out a trade before Monday? I mean, it's possible, but will they? Let's say it that way.
Yeah, anything's possible, right?
Exactly.
It's possible that the Falcons won't take an edge rusher in the first round of this year's draft, but we know
unlikely, but possible.
Yeah, it's it's possible, but it's definitely not going to happen. So, I feel like it is possible that a trade does work out, right? Yeah, I think you're really looking at like the Cleveland Browns right now as the team, because they're kind of sitting in this spot where they're picking number 2 in the draft, and they don't know who's going to go number 1. There's a lot of speculation that the one good quarterback in this year's draft, Cam Ward of Miami, is going to go number 1, either to the Titans or maybe the Giants trade up for him. And so, is Cleveland enough in love with the number 2 quarterback and Shedeur Sanders to take him at 2? There's reports that they are. We'll see on that front. But if you're the Browns, like you don't want to necessarily put all your eggs in that basket, basically, at this point in time. So they're probably the team that makes the most sense to trade for Kirk Cousins. They have some logistical hurdles that they have to get through between now and Monday. They got to restructure a bunch of contracts because technically they don't have enough cap space to be able to make a trade for Kirk Cousins. So it is possible. It's unlikely. But it is at least out of the realm of possibilities out there.
Yeah. Do you see that as being more viable than Terry Fontenot just doubling down and saying, no, he's going to be here as our QB2?
Well, I mean, he's going to have to be if the trade doesn't happen by Monday, right? Like, where it's just one of those situations where like that's the bed that you've made, and so you're gonna have to lie in it. And so if you're willing to take it all the way through Monday, you might as well be willing to take it all the way through, dare I say, September.
Yeah, because at this point it's like Monday, cut or keep. So Jarvis, when you look at just what Aaron said, talking about probably the Cleveland Browns being the primary and likeliest suitor for Kirk Cousins, when you kind of look at where the situation is, the Falcons doubling down yet again earlier this week and late last week saying, hey, Kirk Cousins is our QB2. Do you feel like Terry's going to continue to double down, or do you see that trade option as more viable, especially when the clock is running to Monday?
I think he has to double down at this point, because when you have Kirk Cousins going to go tell on him to Arthur Blank last week, Kirk believes him. I feel like Kirk believes this man wholeheartedly. Like, oh, you really want me to be QB2? Oh, man, I'm about to tell on you. I'm about to go tell. I'm going to the principal office. You know what I'm saying? Arthur, I need to talk. We need to have a conversation. See what's going to. Hey, man, I want to be a starter. I don't want to be sitting around here on this team. So from that standpoint, I think Terry has to, nowadays it seems like he has a little bit more leverage than he had before, because I know I was one to say, hey, yeah, I can talk all that junk y'all want to. They ain't going to end up releasing this man. But now I don't know if I necessarily believe that at this point, because when you talk about $10 million and you talking about sunk costs and all this stuff, like, hey, man, they already the hole, baby. So either you're going to help get me up out of here by trading for him, or shoot, we're going to have an expensive behind backup quarterback. I don't think it reaches that point. But I do feel like this is one of those situations where you're already in. Your cards are already on the table. Everything's out there on the table. So you might as well just double down and say, hey, man, we about to ride this bad boy on out.
Maria, how do you see this kind of playing out over the next couple of days? Terry doubling down, or Terry being more open to say, okay, Cleveland, talk to me?
I lean now more on the side of Terry doubling down. There's a lot of bad blood between Kirk and the Falcons at this point. It's been kind of out there for a while. There's two people. The Falcons is one entity, and Kirk is another, trading blows on national television. And we used to think it was like smoke and mirrors by the Falcons. And now I'm not so sure. Like, I actually think that everything that they've been saying is really what they meant, and this is the NFL. You put a lot of, yeah, I mean, look, you put a lot of stuff out there in the NFL, especially as a general manager. We talk about Terry as the master at saying a lot of words without saying anything at all, right? You do that a lot. And this may be the rare time where I think what the Falcons were saying was legit when it comes to Kirk Cousins. And look, now at this point, it's almost like, Kirk's contract is structured in such a way where we all believed, and to an extent he did have a lot of power in the way that him and Mike McCartney had structured that contract. But now you're looking at, and the Falcons are saying, no, I'm going to teach you a lesson here, and you're going to sit your butt down, and we're just going to pay the $10 million. It's $10 million at the end of the day. Like, whatever, you're going to sit there. And I'm kind of with Jarvis in the sense that I don't really think that it's going to be Kirk as the backup quarterback. Like, something else is going to happen this weekend, though. I know that a radio host in Cleveland said, he's going to be with the Browns by the weekend. I don't know that that's going to happen. Now, it's possible. As Aaron said so eloquently, anything is possible. And it's true. Anything is possible. However, I think this is a really weird display of, like, I'm going to teach you a lesson unfolding in front of our eyes. And I think Kirk is going to be paid $10 million. And I think he's still going to be in Atlanta come Monday.
Yeah. And you could make the case for it going either way. Obviously, the double down, because heck, we're in the middle of March, and that double down, it's been 4 months, and the Falcons have not budged that commentary about him being QB2. But on the same token, you have a front office in Cleveland Browns, and other than what they did with Myles Garrett, that front office is known to be a clusterfuffle, and they're known to kind of give away everything to get almost nothing. And I'm not calling Kirk Cousins nothing. I'm just saying, like, they're known for saying, oh, okay, we'll take whomever for whatever cost. So it's like, it feels like I don't want to say 50-50. I probably would say more like 60-40. Only because it's the Cleveland Browns front office, and the Falcons may actually walk away being on the upside of this deal compared to how this played out with, say, the Denver Broncos, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Russell Wilson. Yeah, but this is the Cleveland Browns. Just everybody remember that. But the other thing I think that people have been kind of tossing around and want to hear from you guys before we wrap up is whether or not another factor is the ethos. We talked about that earlier in the show as far as some of the guys that the Falcons chose to re-sign, but Kirk Cousins being a QB2, a backup. And yes, we know that Kirk Cousins has been a stand-up person, but we also know Kirk has had some commentary that he's thrown out there the last couple of months trying to sort of position himself. So my question is, do you think that the ethos that the Falcons look for in the locker room relative to what they do with Kirk Cousins is even a part of this consideration?
I think and this is based off of my interactions with Kirk. I've talked to Kirk offline, non-press conference Kirk, he's a very engaging guy. Let me just say that. But I just don't feel like he has that in him to be a malcontent. So I feel like if he's on this roster, I feel like he'll continue to be himself. He'll continue to help Michael Penix like he did when he got benched last year. And I feel like he can compartmentalize these things. Like, there's business, and then there's the league and who I am and as a person in this locker room. And I think he can definitely separate those two, unless Mike McCartney gets in his ear and say, hey, man, stop doggone helping that man out. If you really want to get out of here, you can definitely go do what you don't normally do, and they might be willing to get rid of you because they're so big on this ethos type of thing. So yeah, unless he's willing to do that, I don't see the man, I don't see him, conjuring up those type of actions.
Maria, thoughts?
I don't think Kirk Cousins is that kind of guy.
Talking about Kirk.
He's like, I'm over it. Like, please, somebody else take this. I definitely don't think that Kirk is that kind of guy. Regardless of if Mike gets in his ear and tells him, hey, like, ruffle some feathers, which, I mean, he's kind of already done that. But I just don't think that he's someone to really bring like negative energy into a locker room. And especially with Penix, like I just don't think he would do that. It's not, Kirk understands it's not personal towards those guys. It's not, the NFL is such a harsh business, and we get reality checks about that all the time. Grady Jarrett is the perfect example of this is a business, and this is not anything that is personal. And with Kirk, some of it does feel personal now at this point between the both of them, talking about Falcons as an entity and Kirk as the other two. But I just think that Kirk is too much of a professional. He's been in this league for too long to bring something like that in. That being said, I know that the Falcons are very big on the ethos piece, and all that's important. And there's some wonderful people in that locker room, like absolutely no doubt about it. I actually enjoy covering the people that are in that locker room, but I think the Falcons need some more players that can ruffle some feathers. I really do. And there really aren't any guys like that. I think we've talked about this, especially off camera before. That really does help a team to push other players in a different way and to make it competitive. And the Falcons haven't had that. And I think maybe there's something correlated between not winning and guys that aren't really willing to ruffle some feathers. I mean, we can go on and on about lists of, I know Tenitra is going to give the example of maybe George Pickens because she is a Steelers fan, but we can go on and on about the list of guys that are not the status quo and don't fit an ethos in a locker room, and those teams win championships. So, I don't think that Kirk Cousins will do anything like that, though I do think they need to consider maybe bringing some people in like that.
Yeah, I like that thought.
Locker rooms need about at least 5 guys.
It's like a proven fact. It's literally
5
like
guys that the media hates talking to.
Yeah.
At least 5. Just 5. That's it.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of people.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot. 5 guys were like, Cousins over there. We're gonna go over here.
Right. No, that's a great call. Yeah, that's a great call. Yeah, because
I played football in college at Albany State. God bless the unsinkable Albany State University. Yeah, there were guys that I didn't kick it with outside the ball.
That's okay.
And that's okay. Well, guess what? If they got into a fight, guess who's coming? I have to be there for my teammate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like it works the same in the NFL. It's just money involved, well, now money in college and NFL, but yeah, you got to have some guys that you wouldn't let your daughter date. There you go.
Yeah, and there's only one of those guys so far, so they've got to find 4 to compliment Drake London in case he's in the alley or something. Okay, Free, wrap us up because we're right there at the edge of going off the rails. So go ahead and wrap us up.
You're welcome.
Whether or not you think ethos matters.
Appreciate it. I get to wrap this whole thing up.
You don't get all a responsibility.
I think when it comes to Kirk, I'm not worried about Kirk and the Penix relationship. I'm worried about the Falcons, right? We've had 2 seasons now where the Falcons went into the season 100% certain we got our guy at quarterback, and then 2-3 months into the season we're like, oh, are we sure that we have our quarterback? And then we play the musical chairs situation. And so that's my main concern is like, this team is going to get halfway through the season, and if they're not winning games, and they're going to be sitting here going like, well, could we toss the keys back to Kirk Cousins and maybe, like that's the whole kerfuffle that we're wanting to avoid this upcoming season. But as long as they're winning games with Michael Penix, like we don't have to worry about that. But I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it, I would say.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting bridge to cross if we ever, unfortunately, have to go there. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked on Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen. Check out Maria Martin, host of Sports Extra on Sunday on 11 Alive. And, of course, our guy Jarvis, a frequent analyst for Locked on Falcons as well. We will see you guys next time.